Hi, and welcome to our lesson on fractional equations, which are just equations with variables in the denominator of one or more terms. So let's move on to our first practice problem. Here you have 3 over t minus 1/2 equals 1 over 10, and t cannot equal 0. So first thing you do when you solve for these fractional equations is to again find an LCD and multiply both sides by the LCD. In finding an LCD, just to remind you, you can always use a wedding cake. So t, 2, and 10 are my factors. Divide everything by 2, I will still get t. This becomes 1, this becomes 5. So my LCD is 2 times t times 1 times 5, which just equals 10t. And a reminder that the biggest error people make is, again, multiplying only one side of the equation by the LCD, not both sides, which I did just earlier. So here, when I multiply both sides by 10t, I get the following. 30 minus 5t equals t. And what I did in the top was I just distributed that 10t to both fractions. And when I solve for t, my solution is t equals 5. So again, make sure you please copy down this work. And for practice problem 2, you'll be given the problem and you'll be working out the solution on your own and submitting that answer on the form. So here is practice problem number 2. And we have x minus 4 divided by x minus 2 is equal to 4/5. Now, there are actually a couple ways you can solve this. You can either multiply both sides by the LCD, or you notice that this is also just a proportion, so you can use cross products. But I do want you to use the method where you multiply both sides by the LCD, just because that's what you'll be using more of in this section of this chapter. So in solving this, multiply both sides by the LCD, and please write your answer, your solution, in the form. For practice problem number 3, we have 2 over b squared minus b minus the quotient of 2 over b minus 1. And what I want you to do first is rewrite the first fraction so that it's factored. Next thing, in trying to find your LCD, you want to use your wedding cake if you need to. So to show that, this is the process. All right, and you should notice that the LCD in this situation will be b minus 1 times b. So after I multiply both sides by the LCD, I get 2 minus 2b equals b squared minus b. And just to review, when you distribute this to the first fraction, the denominator cancels out with that numerator. As far as the second fraction, only b minus 1 cancels out, so you're multiplying b times negative 2. Now here, when you solve for b, notice that you have an exponent of 2, which should remind you now that you have to solve for this by factoring your equation. To solve by factoring, you still need to set it equal to 0 first. And I'm going to move everything to the right since I want to keep my highest term, the term with the highest exponent, the highest degree exponent as a positive. I want to move everything to the right side. Okay, now that everything has been moved to the right side, I'm ready to factor my equation. So I will just use a diamond, or you can use guess and check. And you should get the factored form of b plus 2 times the difference of b and 1. So my solutions are negative 2 and positive 1. However, the tricky thing about these problems is that when you solve for equations with fractional coefficients, when you multiply by the LCD, sometimes you might get a solution that is actually not a solution for the original equation. You'll get an extra solution, which won't work. So in this situation, if you plug in negative 2 into the original equation of... And now for our fourth practice problem, we're going to start off with a word problem. The sum of a number and its reciprocal, that should say its, ITS, no apostrophe. Scratch that. The sum of a number and its reciprocal is 25/12. Find the number. So what should your equation be to represent this statement? Well, you have a number plus its reciprocal, so 1 over x, is 25/12. And you would solve this just like you solve the other equations by multiplying with an LCD. And in this situation, the LCD will be 12x. So multiply both sides by 12x. On this side, you will get 12x squared plus 12 is equal to 25x. Now notice again that I have here 12x squared. So whenever you see something like this, then that lets you know you need to factor to solve. And so to factor, you need to set it equal to 0. And when I factor it all away, I get 3x minus 4 as one of the factors and 4x minus 3. And you can double check that. And so your solution will be, when you solve for each factor and set each factor equal to 0, x can equal, or the number can be, 4/3 or 3/4. And you'd want to double check to make sure that none of these two solutions will give you a denominator of 0 in the original equation. And now we're going to move on to our last problem. For this last problem, it will be a word problem, and you'll be submitting your answer on the form online. In the form online. So the problem reads, the sum of the reciprocals of two consecutive even integers is 11/60. So two consecutive even. Find the integers. So go ahead and set up an equation, solve for your equation, and find the two integers. If you have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow when we review this lesson, or actually Thursday since I won't be here tomorrow. And submit your answer online, and make sure to answer the last question as well related to this picture. See you Thursday.